Good evening. A little while back, a couple of months ago by the time this video actually goes out, a friend of mine asked me why it was that certain stations on the tube map are in two zones. For instance, Vauxhall sits on the boundary of zones 1 and 2 and Stratford International is in zone 3. It's a good question, so I went to my little library and did some research. Fare zones as a concept were introduced by the Greater London Council, led by Ken Livingstone. At the time, it was one of a number of policies intended to make public transport more accessible to ordinary Londoners. It was generally considered that the fares on London transport had become prohibitively expensive for the people it was intended to serve, which sounds strangely familiar. Livingstone introduced a policy known as Fares Fair in 1981, which would reduce the cost of public transport by means of a subsidy paid by the London boroughs. The policy was evidently popular with Londoners as it resulted in an increase in use of 500,000 passengers. It wasn't so popular with Bromley Council. Council leader Dennis Barkway argued that it was unfair for Bromley to pay the subsidy as the Underground didn't reach their borough and so they were paying for something they weren't using. Transport historian Christian Wolmar makes the counter-argument that commuters in Bromley who worked outside the borough undoubtedly did use the Underground and, of course, would benefit from the reductions in congestion and pollution caused by fewer cars on the road. Nevertheless, the GLC was taken to court and Fares Fair was ruled illegal. Fares almost doubled and usage of public transport dropped to even lower than pre-1981 levels. What did stick, however, was the system of fare zones. Initially there were only two fare zones, West End and City, covering what is now Zone 1. In 1982 they were combined and joined by Zone 2 and Zones 3A, 3B and 3C, which later became 3, 4 and 5. Later still, Zone 5 was divided into 5 and 6. Subsequently, we've had Zones 7 to 15 to enable the Outer Metropolitan Line and Elizabeth Line stations, as well as certain out-of-London commuter towns, to be incorporated into the fare system. The boundaries have shifted a little over the years, but the details are far too dull to represent visually. Incredibly, London Transport were initially opposed to this system, which you would think would make their lives a lot easier. However, they've subsequently embraced it, introducing the travel card and later the Oyster to take advantage. So, we come back to the question of why certain stations are on the border. Basically, it's a question of keeping fares low. If a station is in two zones, the fare is only that necessary for the outer zone. That being said, TfL has been a little underhanded about this in the past, shifting the Zone 1 boundary to engulf Shoreditch High Street to help pay for the London Overground, for instance. But why have these particular stations been chosen? Why Notting Hill Gate, Vauxhall, Stratford, Herne Hill, North Greenwich? I've done quite a bit of research into this question, both online and in the many books I own on the Underground, and I have concluded that I have no idea. Nobody seems to know, or if they do, they're not saying. Sorry about that. What a disappointing video. Hi all. Hope you enjoyed this unfulfilling episode of Tales from the Tube. Please like, share, subscribe and comment as you wish. Actually, maybe this isn't the best one to share. Oh well. See you next time on Tales from the Tube.